My father-in-law stopped doctors from resuscitating my newborn. He only wanted sons. She was a girl. But what he didn't expect was how I made him regret it for the rest of his life. What are you doing? My husband's voice roared through the delivery room. That's my daughter. Step back, son. Those cold words came from my father-in-law, Richard. The doctor said she's not strong enough. It's God's will. You told them to stop? She's breathing. Get away from my baby. A daughter is a disappointment anyway. You can try again for a proper heir. My father-in-law stopped doctors from resuscitating my newborn. He only wanted sons. She was a girl. Hi, I'm Patricia. I never imagined my father-in-law would try to let my newborn daughter die simply because she wasn't a boy. But that's exactly what Richard Ashford tried to do. And it revealed just how twisted his obsession with male heirs had become. I met my husband James when I was 25. He was 27, working at his father's investment banking firm in Boston, and seemed like a genuinely good man. We dated for a year before getting engaged, and during that time I got to know his family. His father, Richard, was wealthy, controlling, and had very specific ideas about how the world should work. His mother, Barbara, was quiet, subdued, almost invisible in her own home. James had two younger sisters, Elizabeth and Jennifer. Both were accomplished. Elizabeth was a prosecutor at the district attorney's office, and Jennifer was a pediatric surgeon. But Richard barely acknowledged their achievements. He'd built his company with the expectation that his son would take over, that the Ashford name would continue through male descendants. The fact that he'd had 3 children and only one was male seemed to be a constant source of disappointment to him. My daughters are successful in spite of their gender, he'd said once at a family dinner at Legal Seafoods, like it was a compliment. Elizabeth and Jennifer had exchanged looks but said nothing. I was horrified. That's pretty sexist, Richard, I said carefully. He'd laughed. It's just reality, Patricia. Men build empires. Women support them. That's how civilization works. James had apologized later. He's old-fashioned. He doesn't mean anything by it. He absolutely means it. Your sisters are amazing, and he treats them like they're worthless. I know, but he's not going to change. It's easier to just ignore him. That should have been my warning. But I love James, and I convinced myself that his father's views wouldn't affect our relationship. I was wrong. We got married 2 years later. Beautiful wedding, expensive because Richard insisted on paying for everything so he could control every detail. He'd wanted us to have the reception at his country club in Brookline. He'd wanted specific people invited. He'd wanted James in a particular tuxedo style that was appropriate for an Ashford. Barbara had tried to include me in some decisions, but Richard shut her down every time. The bride's family handles decorations. The groom's family handles substance. That's tradition. My parents were middle-class teachers from Quincy, sweet people who couldn't compete with Richard's wealth or his overwhelming personality. They'd felt increasingly sidelined as the wedding planning progressed, and I felt powerless to stop it. After the wedding, things got worse. Richard expected James at the office constantly. Weekends, evenings, holidays didn't matter. You're being groomed to take over the company, Richard would say. That requires sacrifice. James was exhausted all the time. Our marriage suffered. We barely saw each other in our Back Bay brownstone. When I complained, James would say, just a few more years. Once I'm fully established, we'll have more freedom. Elizabeth and Jennifer warned me. We'd started having secret sister-in-law lunches at places like Neptune Oyster, where they'd share horror stories about growing up with Richard. He wouldn't let us play sports growing up, Elizabeth said. Said it would make us too masculine. Jennifer wanted to be a veterinarian as a kid, and he told her women shouldn't work with large animals because they're not strong enough. He literally told me on my law school graduation day that I was wasting my education, Jennifer added. Said I should find a husband and focus on that instead. How does Barbara handle it? I asked. They both went quiet. Then Elizabeth said, Mom doesn't handle it. She endures it. She's been enduring it for 35 years. Has she ever thought about leaving? Probably. But Richard controls everything: the money, the house in Beacon Hill. Even her Lexus is in his name. She has a credit card, but he reviews every statement. She's trapped. I felt sick. I looked at these strong, successful women and realized they'd escaped, but Barbara hadn't. And I was potentially walking into the same trap. When I got pregnant a year into our marriage, Richard's reaction was telling. He was overjoyed until the gender reveal at 20 weeks. We'd planned a small party, just family, at our place. Barbara had made a cake with colored filling inside that would reveal the baby's sex when we cut it. Richard had been pacing, excited, talking about the Ashford legacy and my grandson. James cut the cake. Pink filling. A girl. The room went silent. Richard's face transformed from joy to something cold and hard. Well, he said finally. That's disappointing. Dad, James said quietly. Don't. I'm just being honest. Every man wants a son. You can try again. This baby is wanted and loved, I said, my voice shaking. Regardless of gender. Of course, Richard said dismissively. But facts are facts. A daughter won't carry on the family name. She'll just marry into someone else's family. Barbara had tears in her eyes. Elizabeth and Jennifer looked furious but unsurprised. This was their childhood all over again, being made to feel like disappointment simply for being female. The pregnancy was difficult. High blood pressure, gestational diabetes, constant monitoring. I needed support, but James was barely home. Richard kept him at the office more than ever, as if punishing him for having a daughter. Richard's behavior got stranger as my due date approached. He stopped asking about the pregnancy, didn't help with the nursery, didn't show any interest in baby names. It was like he'd decided this grandchild didn't matter. Barbara tried to make up for it. She'd come over and help me set up the nursery with its soft lavender walls, bring casseroles and shepherd's pie, talk about how excited she was for a granddaughter. Girls are special, she'd say wistfully. I always wanted James to have daughters. Maybe they'd break the cycle. What cycle? She'd just shake her head sadly. I went into labor 3 weeks early. James rushed me to Massachusetts General Hospital, and we called both sets of parents. My parents arrived within an hour. Barbara came alone. Richard is at an important meeting, she explained quietly. He'll come by later. The labor was complicated. The baby's heart rate kept dropping. After 14 hours, the doctor recommended a C-section. I was terrified but agreed. James held my hand the whole time. Our daughter was born at 7:23 p.m. She was small, just over 5 pounds, and she wasn't crying. The medical team took her immediately to assess her. I could hear them working, hear the urgency in their voices, but I couldn't see what was happening from my position on the operating table. What's going on? I asked the doctor, Dr. Morrison. Is she okay? She's having some trouble breathing. We're helping her. Just stay calm. James left my side to be with the baby. I was still on the table being stitched up, trying to hear anything over the sound of my own heartbeat. That's when Richard arrived. I heard his voice in the delivery room, loud and commanding. I came as soon as I could. Where's my grandchild? Silence. Then Richard's voice again, quieter. I see. Well, these things happen. I couldn't see what was happening. The surgical drape was still up, but I heard James's voice suddenly rise. What are you doing? My husband's voice roared through the delivery room. That's my daughter. Step back, son. The doctor said she's not strong enough. It's God's will. You told them to stop? She's breathing. Get away from my baby. A daughter is a disappointment anyway. You can try again for a proper air. The sound of a scuffle. Medical staff shouting. Then the most beautiful sound in the world, my baby crying. Strong, healthy crying. A nurse came to my side. Your daughter is fine. She's breathing well. We're taking her to the NICU just for observation, but she's going to be okay. What happened? What did Richard do? The nurse's face was tight with anger. Your husband can explain. Try to rest. But I couldn't rest. Not until James came back, his face white with rage and shock. Your father told the doctors to stop resuscitation, I said. It wasn't a question. James nodded, tears streaming down his face. She was breathing. She just needed a little help, some oxygen. It was routine. But he told them she was too weak. That we'd decided to let nature take its course. That we'd want to try again for a son. His voice broke. Patricia, he tried to let our daughter die. The room spun. He what? The doctor was about to stop. They thought he was speaking for us. If I hadn't been there, if I'd still been with you. His voice broke. He would have killed her. Security removed Richard from the hospital. The medical staff filed reports. Dr. Morrison, who'd almost listened to Richard, was horrified when he realized Richard wasn't speaking for us, that we desperately wanted our daughter saved. Our baby Claire spent 3 days in the NICU under observation. She was perfect, healthy, strong, everything we'd hoped for. Richard was banned from Massachusetts General. When Barbara heard what happened, she had a breakdown in the waiting room. I knew he was bad, she sobbed to me. But this is evil. My parents were horrified. My father, usually the most mild-mannered man in the world, told James that Richard was never to be near Claire or me again. I don't care if he's your father. He tried to murder our granddaughter. James agreed. He's dead to me. But Richard didn't see it that way. He tried to spin the story, telling people there had been a misunderstanding, that he'd been trying to prevent unnecessary medical intervention, that everyone was overreacting. Elizabeth and Jennifer weren't having it. They'd lived their whole lives being devalued by their father. This was the final straw. They both called him, and I heard Jennifer's side of the conversation from her speakerphone. You tried to kill your granddaughter because she's a girl. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. The hospital has it documented. The staff heard you. James heard you. You told them to let her die so they could try again for a proper heir. I was in shock. I misspoke. You're a monster. And I'm done. Elizabeth's done. James is done. You just destroyed your entire family because you can't accept that women are human beings. Jennifer hung up. Elizabeth called next and said essentially the same thing. Then she did something brilliant. She contacted the hospital's legal team and made sure everything was documented properly. The hospital investigation revealed that Richard had claimed to be speaking on our behalf as parents. He told the medical team we'd discussed DNR options. He'd lied, impersonated us, interfered with medical care. While they couldn't press criminal charges without us pushing for it, they banned him permanently from all hospitals in their network and flagged his name in their system. But the real damage came from the family fallout. Barbara filed for divorce within a week. 35 years of marriage ended because Richard had finally crossed the line she couldn't ignore. I let him treat our daughters like they were worthless, she told me, crying in our living room. I let him control and diminish me. But I will not let him murder my granddaughter and get away with it. The divorce was brutal. Barbara had been documenting things for years, keeping journals, saving emails. She'd been planning to leave but never had the courage. Now she had the courage and the evidence. Richard's financial control tactics, his emotional abuse, his treatment of their daughters, all of it came out. Elizabeth represented Barbara in the divorce, and she was merciless, using every legal tool at her disposal. Richard's business suffered immediately. James quit, refusing to work for a man who tried to let his daughter die. Elizabeth and Jennifer had both sent business to their father's firm over the years, referrals, connections, networking. That stopped entirely. Barbara's family, who Richard had always looked down on, started telling people what had happened. In Richard's social circles, the Brookline Country Club, the Union Club, his charitable boards, the story spread. The country club, where he'd been a member for 20 years, quietly suggested he resign after multiple member complaints. His golf buddies stopped returning calls. Business partners started distancing themselves. James started his own investment firm, Ashford Capital Management. Several of Richard's best employees followed him, sick of Richard's treatment of women in the workplace. Clients followed too, preferring to work with James's more progressive approach. Within 6 months, James's new company was thriving, while Richard struggled to keep projects afloat. The divorce settlement was devastating for Richard. Barbara got the Beacon Hill townhouse, half of everything, and substantial alimony. She'd spent 35 years enabling his business success, managing his life, hosting his clients at dinner parties. The judge recognized that contribution. Richard moved into a small condo in Worcester. His business was failing without James and without the employees who'd left. His social life was destroyed. No one wanted to be associated with a man who tried to let his granddaughter die. His health declined too. The stress of losing everything, his family, his business, his reputation, took its toll. He had a heart attack 9 months after Claire's birth. Not fatal, but enough to leave him weakened and scared. He tried to reach out to James once he got out of the hospital. A long letter arrived at our brownstone about how he'd made a mistake in a moment of shock, how he deeply regretted his actions, how he hoped we could rebuild our relationship. James read it aloud to me one evening. There was no actual apology in it, no acknowledgement of the real harm he tried to cause, just excuses and justifications and vague regrets. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Nothing. I want to do nothing." He doesn't deserve a response. We never replied. Richard sent more letters, then emails, then tried calling. We blocked everything. He tried to send gifts for Claire's first birthday, an expensive silver rattle from Tiffany's. We returned them unopened. Barbara, on the other hand, was thriving. She'd gotten a job working at a women's shelter in Cambridge, using her experience to help other women escape controlling relationships. She'd started therapy. She'd reconnected with old friends Richard had isolated her from. She looked younger, happier, freer. She'd cut her hair into a stylish bob, started wearing brighter colors instead of the muted tones Richard preferred. Even bought herself a red Honda Pilot with her own money. She was an incredible grandmother to Claire. Patient, loving, present, everything Richard wasn't. Claire's first word was Nana, and Barbara cried happy tears. Elizabeth met someone wonderful, a kind man named David who treated her as an equal partner. They got engaged at Cape Cod, and Elizabeth specifically told me she'd never have been able to be in a healthy relationship if Richard was still in her life. "I had to cut out the poison to make room for the good," she said. Jennifer was excelling in her medical career. She'd been promoted to chief of pediatric surgery and was one of the youngest doctors to achieve that position at her hospital. She'd send me pictures of award ceremonies and conferences with captions like, "Guess I wasn't too weak after all. James and I were stronger than ever." The crisis had forced us to choose stay enmeshed with Richard's toxicity or build our own life. We chose ourselves, chose Claire, chose each other. Sometimes I think about that moment in the delivery room, how close we came to losing Claire. How Richard's hatred of women was so deep that he'd rather his granddaughter die than accept her existence. But then I look at Claire, now 3 years old, thriving and happy. She loves dinosaurs and building blocks. She's fierce and funny and brilliant. She asks a million questions and climbs everything she can reach. And I'm just grateful. Grateful James was there in that delivery room. Grateful Dr. Morrison and the nurses realized in time what was happening. Grateful we had the strength to cut Richard out completely. Some people are so poisoned by their beliefs that they'll destroy everything around them. Richard destroyed his marriage, his relationship with all his children, his business, his reputation, his health, all because he couldn't accept that daughters are just as valuable as sons. Last month, we heard through Barbara that Richard had another health scare. He's alone now, living in that small condo, his business barely surviving. He has a nurse who comes twice a week, but no family visits him. And now he's alone with his legacy. No family, no heirs, no one to carry on the Ashford name he was so obsessed with protecting. James's company bears the name, but James is making it something different. Something inclusive, something good. That's Richard's punishment. Living with the consequences of his hatred and watching from a distance as the family he destroyed thrives without him. Barbara brings Claire to our place for dinner every Sunday. We make spaghetti and meatballs, Claire's favorite, and we laugh around the table. Elizabeth and Jennifer join us when they can. These dinners are loud and chaotic and full of love. Sometimes I catch Barbara watching Claire with this expression of wonder and sadness mixed together. I know she's thinking about her own daughters, about the childhood they had, about how different things could have been. She'll never doubt her worth, Barbara said to me once, watching Claire explain something very seriously to her stuffed animals. "You're making sure of that." "We all are," I told her. "All of us, you, Elizabeth, Jennifer, James, my parents, were all making sure she knows she's valued." Barbara smiled. That's the real legacy. Not a name or a business. This love, respect, equality, that's what matters. She's right. Richard wanted to build a legacy through male heirs and family business. Instead, he's left us with something far more valuable: the knowledge of what not to be, the determination to do better, the commitment to raise our daughter knowing she's worth everything simply because she exists. If someone tried to harm your child based on their gender, would you ever give them a second chance? For us, the answer was clear. Some actions are unforgivable. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Richard made his choice in that delivery room, and we made ours. And every day when I look at Claire's bright eyes and hear her laughter filling our home, I know we made the right decision.